Have you ever noticed how you can tell your child to do something 5 times and they act like they haven't heard a single word? Meanwhile, the moment you whisper about getting ice cream from 3 rooms away, they come running instantly. It's frustrating, isn't it? You're standing there repeating yourself over and over, feeling like a broken record, wondering why your perfectly capable child seems to have suddenly gone deaf. But here's the thing. Your child isn't ignoring you to be defiant or difficult, at least not most of the time. There are actually very specific reasons why children seem to tune us out, and once you understand what's really going on in their developing brains, everything starts to make sense. More importantly, you'll know exactly what to do differently to actually get through to them. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the 7 main reasons why children ignore instructions and what you can do about each one. The first reason children ignore instructions is something called selective attention, and it's not what you think. We often assume that when our child is focused on something, they can still hear us talking to them. After all, as adults, we can listen to someone while we're doing something else, right? But children's brains work differently. When a child is deeply engaged in an activity, whether they're building with blocks, watching a show, playing a video game, or even just observing an ant crawling on the sidewalk, their brain essentially filters out everything else. It's not that they're choosing to ignore you. Their brain is literally not processing the sound of your voice as important information. Think of it like this. Imagine you're reading a really engrossing book or watching an intense movie. Someone asks you a question, and you genuinely don't hear them, even though they're sitting right next to you. That's what's happening with your child, except it happens to them much more intensely and much more frequently because their brains are still developing the ability to divide attention between multiple things. The part of the brain responsible for shifting attention, the prefrontal cortex, isn't fully developed until well into their 20s. So when your 5-year-old is playing with their toys and you call from the kitchen asking them to wash their hands for dinner, their brain might genuinely not register that you've spoken. The solution here isn't to just talk louder or repeat yourself from across the room. Instead, you need to physically enter their space. Walk over to where they are, get down to their eye level, and make physical contact. Put your hand on their shoulder or arm, say their name, and wait until they actually look at you before you give the instruction. This physical presence helps their brains switch from whatever they're focused on to focusing on you. It signals that something important is about to happen and they need to pay attention. Yes, it takes more effort than yelling from another room, but it's infinitely more effective. The second reason children ignore instructions is auditory processing delays. This is a big one that most parents don't realize. When you speak to your child, the words don't instantly translate into understanding and action. There's a whole process that has to happen. First, their ears have to hear the sounds. Then their brain has to recognize those sounds as words. Then it has to understand what those words mean. Then it has to figure out what action is being requested. Then it has to plan how to do that action. And finally, it has to send signals to the body to actually do it. For adults, this process happens so quickly we don't even notice it. But for children, especially younger ones, this can take significantly longer. Research shows that children often need 7 to 10 seconds to fully process a verbal instruction and begin responding to it. 7 to 10 seconds might not sound like much, but I want you to actually count it out right now. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi. That's a long time, isn't it? Especially when you're busy and trying to get things done. But here's what usually happens. We give our child an instruction, and after maybe 2 or 3 seconds of not seeing them move, we assume they're ignoring us. So we repeat the instruction, often with more frustration in our voice. But what we've actually done is interrupt their processing. They were working on understanding and responding to the first instruction when we gave them a second one, which means they now have to start the whole process over again. It's like trying to solve a math problem and someone keeps giving you new numbers before you can finish calculating. The solution is simple, but requires patience. After you give an instruction, count to 10 in your head. Really wait the full 10 seconds before you say anything else. Give your child's brain the time it actually needs to process what you've said. You'll be amazed at how often they do start following through right around that 7 to 10 second mark, as long as you haven't interrupted their processing by repeating yourself too soon. The third reason children ignore instructions is that the instructions are too complex for their developmental stage. This is huge, and it's something most parents get wrong without realizing it. We tend to overestimate what our children can handle in terms of multi-step directions. A 2-year-old can typically handle one simple step, something like get your shoes. A 3-year-old can usually manage two related steps, like get your shoes and bring them here. A 4-year-old might handle two unrelated steps, such as put your cup in the sink and then get your shoes. And a 5 or 6-year-old can often manage three steps, like put your cup in the sink, get your shoes and meet me at the door. But what do we actually do? We give our 3-year-old instructions like go upstairs, brush your teeth, put on your pajamas, and get into bed. That's 4 steps, and they're not even in the same location. For a 3-year-old's brain, that's overwhelming. What usually happens is they start on the first step, get distracted, forget the rest, and then we think they're not listening. But really, we've just given them more than their brain can hold on to at once. It's like trying to remember a phone number that's twice as long as normal. You might get the first few digits, but the rest just falls away. The solution is to break down your instructions into smaller chunks that match your child's developmental stage. Instead of giving that 3-year-old all 4 steps at once, you'd say go upstairs and brush your teeth. Then once they've done that, you give the next instruction. Now put on your pajamas. And then finally, get into bed. Yes, this means you can't just shout instructions from downstairs and expect everything to get done. You might need to follow them through the routine, at least until they're old enough to handle all the steps at once. But this approach actually teaches them to follow through on instructions, which builds the foundation for handling more complex directions later. The fourth reason children ignore instructions is something called temporal discounting, which is just a fancy way of saying that children have a really hard time doing things that benefit their future self instead of their present self. To a child, especially a young child, right now is all that matters. The future, even if it's just 5 minutes from now, feels abstract and unimportant. So when you tell your child to clean up their toys so they can find them later, or to put on their coat so they won't be cold outside, their brain doesn't care about later or outside. All they know is that right now they want to keep playing, and right now they're perfectly comfortable without a coat. This is why children will ignore instructions that seem perfectly reasonable to us. We're thinking about consequences and future outcomes. They're thinking about this exact moment. Their prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for future planning and delayed gratification, is still developing. They literally don't have the same capacity we do to think about future consequences. The solution here is to make the instruction relevant to right now, not later. Instead of put your toys away so you can find them tomorrow, try put your toys away, and then we'll have a snack. The snack is immediate, so it matters to them. Instead of put on your coat so you won't be cold, try put on your coat, and then we can go to the park. Going to the park is happening now, in their mind, so it's worth doing what you ask. You're essentially bridging the gap between the present moment and the future outcome by making the future outcome feel more immediate. The fifth reason children ignore instructions is emotional flooding. When a child is experiencing big emotions, whether that's excitement, frustration, anger, or even joy, their ability to process and follow instructions drops dramatically. Think about the last time you were really upset or really excited. Could you focus on complex tasks? Probably not. Your emotional state was taking up most of your mental resources. It's the same for children, except even more intense because they don't have years of practice regulating their emotions like we do. When your child is in the middle of a tantrum, or when they're bouncing off the walls with excitement because grandma is coming to visit, their brain is flooded with neurochemicals related to that emotion. The logical, instruction-following part of their brain essentially goes offline. This is why you can tell your child something during a meltdown, and they act like they haven't heard you at all. They genuinely might not be processing your words in that moment. The solution is to wait for the emotional storm to pass before giving important instructions. If your child is upset, your first job is to help them calm down. Get down on their level, acknowledge their feelings, and help them regulate. I can see you're really frustrated that you can't have another cookie. That's hard. Once they've calmed down, then you can give instructions. If they're overly excited, you might need to give them a few minutes to burn off that energy or help them take some deep breaths before you expect them to focus on what you're saying. Trying to give instructions to an emotionally flooded child is like trying to have a conversation with someone who's underwater. They're just not in a state to receive the message. The sixth reason children ignore instructions is inconsistent follow-through from parents, and this one is tough to hear because it means we're part of the problem. But stick with me because understanding this will change everything. Here's what happens in many households. A parent gives an instruction. The child doesn't follow through. The parent repeats the instruction. The child still doesn't follow through. The parent repeats it again, maybe with more urgency or frustration. The child continues ignoring it. Finally, either the parent gives up and does it themselves, or they escalate to yelling, or they give a consequence they don't actually follow through on. What has the child learned from this pattern? They've learned that the first instruction doesn't really matter. Neither does the second or third. They've learned that they can ignore instructions multiple times before anything actually happens. We've accidentally trained them that our words don't require immediate action. It's like the boy who cried wolf, except we're the ones crying wolf. We say things we don't enforce, so our words lose meaning. Think about it this way. If every single time you didn't stop at a red light, your car immediately shut off and wouldn't start again for 10 minutes, you'd stop at every red light, wouldn't you? But if running red lights had no consequence most of the time, you'd probably start doing it more often. Children operate the same way. If instructions don't consistently lead to follow-through being required, they learn that instructions are optional. The solution is to become incredibly consistent. When you give an instruction, you must follow through every single time. Not most of the time, every time. This doesn't mean being harsh or punitive. It means that if you say, "Please put your shoes on," and your child doesn't do it within a reasonable time frame, you calmly walk over and you help them do it. You don't let it drop. You don't do it for them while they run off to play. You guide them through completing what you asked, every single time. This is exhausting at first, I won't lie. It takes way more energy than just doing things yourself or letting it slide. But after a few weeks of absolute consistency, something magical happens. Your child learns that when you give an instruction, it's going to happen one way or another, so they might as well just do it. Their ignoring behavior dramatically decreases because they've learned it doesn't work. The seventh and final reason children ignore instructions is that they simply don't understand what you're asking. This happens more often than you'd think, especially with younger children who are still building their vocabulary and understanding of language. We use phrases and words that seem perfectly clear to us, but might be confusing or ambiguous to a child. For example, clean your room seems straightforward, right? But to a young child, what does clean actually mean? Does it mean put toys in the toy box, make the bed, put dirty clothes in the hamper, organize the bookshelf? They genuinely might not know what you're asking them to do, or consider get ready for bed. To you, that's a clear sequence of tasks. To a child, especially one who's still learning routines, that phrase might not translate to specific actions. Similarly, we sometimes use idioms or figures of speech that children take literally. Hold your horses doesn't mean anything to a child who doesn't have horses. Hang on a second is confusing when there's nothing to hang on to. Even something like use your inside voice requires the child to understand the abstract concept of different voice levels for different locations. The solution is to be extremely specific and concrete with your language. Instead of clean your room, say, put your toys in the toy box. Then once that's done, put your dirty clothes in the hamper. Break it down into specific, concrete actions. Instead of get ready for bed, say put on your pajamas. Use words and phrases that directly describe the physical action you want them to take. Avoid vague terms like clean, tidy, behave, or be good. These are abstract concepts. Instead, describe the specific behavior. Not be good at the store, but keep your hands to yourself and use a quiet voice. The more concrete and specific you are, the more likely your child is to understand exactly what you want and actually do it. Now, I want to tie all of this together because understanding why children ignore instructions is only half the battle. The other half is actually implementing strategies that work. So let me give you a framework that addresses all 7 of these reasons at once. When you need to give your child an instruction, here's what you do. First, eliminate or reduce distractions. Turn off the TV, put down phones, move to a quieter space if possible. This addresses the selective attention issue. Second, get physically close to your child. Walk over to them, get down to their level, and make gentle physical contact. Put your hand on their shoulder or arm. This helps pull their attention away from whatever they're focused on and signals that something important is about to happen. Third, say their name and wait for eye contact. Don't give the instruction until they're actually looking at you. This ensures their attention is on you before you speak. Fourth, give a clear, specific, age-appropriate instruction using concrete language. Remember the developmental stages. 1 step for toddlers, 2 related steps for 3-year-olds, and so on. Be specific about exactly what action you want them to take. Fifth, use a calm, confident tone and supportive body language. Not harsh or loud, which triggers stress responses. Not uncertain or questioning, which suggests they have a choice. Calm and confident, which communicates that you mean what you say in a safe, supportive way. Sixth, wait. Count to 10 in your head. Give their brain time to process what you've said and begin acting on it. Don't repeat, don't add more information, just wait. Seventh, observe what happens. If they follow through, immediately give specific praise. You put your shoes on right away, great listening. If they don't follow through after 10 seconds, calmly repeat the instruction once, making it even simpler if needed. If they still don't respond, physically guide them through the task while narrating what you're doing. We're putting on shoes now. Here's one shoe, now the other shoe. And eighth, follow through every single time. No exceptions. This consistency is what teaches your child that your instructions matter and need to be acted upon. I know this seems like a lot of steps just to get your child to do something simple. And yes, it takes more time and energy than just shouting instructions from across the house. But here's what you need to understand. You're not just trying to get your child to put their shoes on right now. You're teaching them a skill that will serve them for their entire life. The ability to listen to instructions, process them, and follow through is fundamental to success in school, in relationships, in jobs, in everything. Every time you go through this process, you're building neural pathways in their developing brain. You're teaching them that instructions have meaning, that following through leads to positive outcomes, and that they're capable of doing what's asked of them. You're also building your relationship with them. When you take the time to get on their level, make eye contact, speak calmly, and guide them through tasks, you're showing them that you respect them as individuals. You're not just barking orders at them like they're subordinates. You're communicating with them like they're people worthy of your time and attention. And over time, this approach becomes faster and easier. Right now, you might need to physically walk over to your child every single time you give an instruction. But after weeks and months of consistency, you'll find that you can give instructions from further away and they'll still respond. Why? Because you've trained their brain that instructions matter, that your words have meaning, and that following through is expected. You've also taught them how to shift their attention, process verbal information, and execute tasks. These are skills that build on themselves. One more thing I want to address is the difference between can't and won't. Sometimes children genuinely can't follow an instruction because of one of the 7 reasons we've discussed. Their attention is too absorbed, their processing is too slow, the instruction is too complex, they're too emotionally flooded, or they don't understand what you're asking. Other times, children won't follow an instruction because they're testing boundaries, asserting independence, or they've learned that ignoring works. It's really important to be able to tell the difference because your response should be different. If your child can't follow the instruction, they need support. They need you to simplify, to wait longer, to help them calm down, or to guide them through the task. Being harsh or punitive when a child can't follow through doesn't teach them anything except that they're not capable, which damages their confidence and your relationship. But if your child won't follow the instruction, meaning they're capable but choosing not to, they need consistency and boundaries. They need to learn that choosing not to follow instructions leads to you calmly but firmly ensuring it happens anyway. Not through punishment, but through inevitable follow-through. How do you tell the difference? Look at patterns. If your child consistently can't follow a certain type of instruction, it's probably a can't issue. Maybe the instructions are too complex for their age, or maybe they have an auditory processing challenge that needs support. But if your child can follow instructions perfectly well in some situations, but not others, or if they suddenly start ignoring instructions they used to follow, it's more likely a won't issue. They're testing whether the rules still apply, whether your words still have meaning. In these cases, doubling down on consistency is key. Let me give you a real example of how this all plays together. Let's say you have a 4-year-old and it's time to leave for preschool. You're running late, you're stressed, and you need your child to put their shoes on right now. Here's what typically happens. You're in the kitchen packing lunch and you yell, "Put your shoes on, we need to leave." Your child is in the living room playing with blocks and doesn't respond. You yell again, louder and more frustrated. "I said put your shoes on." Still nothing. You yell a third time, now angry. "If you don't put your shoes on right now, we're going to be late." Your child might start moving toward the shoes, but slowly, or they might start whining, or they might continue ignoring you. Finally, you storm into the living room, grab the shoes, and either shove them on their feet yourself while they cry, or you threaten some consequence, and everyone ends up upset. Now let's replay this with the framework I've given you. You're in the kitchen and you realize it's time to go. Instead of yelling, you walk into the living room. You crouch down next to your child who's playing with blocks. You put your hand gently on their shoulder and say their name. "Emma." You wait until she looks up at you. Now you have her attention. You say in a calm, confident tone, "It's time to put on your shoes." You point to where the shoes are. This is one clear step, appropriate for a 4-year-old. You keep your hand on her shoulder, blocking her view of the blocks so she's not distracted by them. Now you wait. You count to 10 in your head. Around 7 seconds, Emma gets up and walks toward her shoes. You immediately praise her. "You listened right away, thank you." She puts on her shoes, maybe needing a little help with the straps, and you're out the door. Total time, maybe 30 seconds longer than the yelling method. But Emma isn't crying, you're not frustrated, and you've just reinforced positive instruction following behavior. Which scenario do you think leads to better outcomes long term? The beautiful thing about understanding why children ignore instructions is that it removes so much of the frustration and personal offense we tend to feel. When your child doesn't listen, it's easy to think they're being defiant, disrespectful, or difficult. It's easy to take it personally, like they're deliberately trying to make your life harder. But when you understand that their brain is genuinely processing differently than yours, that they're not developmentally capable of the same level of attention division and future thinking that you are, and that you might be accidentally contributing to the problem through inconsistency or unclear communication, it changes everything. You can approach the situation with curiosity instead of frustration. Instead of thinking, "Why is my child being so difficult?" you can think, "What's preventing my child from following through right now? Is the instruction too complex? Are they emotionally flooded? Did I give their brain enough processing time?" This shift in perspective makes you a more effective parent and makes the whole experience less stressful for everyone involved. So to recap, the 7 reasons children ignore instructions are selective attention, auditory processing delays, instructions that are too complex for their developmental stage, temporal discounting, emotional flooding, inconsistent follow-through from parents, and lack of understanding about what's being asked. And the solution involves getting physically close, ensuring attention before speaking, giving clear and age-appropriate instructions, waiting for processing time, being consistent with follow-through, and being specific with your language. If you implement these strategies consistently, I promise you'll see a dramatic difference in how often your child actually listens and follows through. It won't happen overnight, because you're essentially retraining both your habits and theirs. But stick with it, because the payoff is enormous.